What should you do if your computer will not boot? It is the unpleasant side of computing that computers equipment fails a lot. I have a pile of equipment next to me that has failed during the hot summer here. So I know it well. Some of it belongs to me and some of it belongs to other people. Let's see, what else can I say? I wonder what happened there. All right. This presentation will eventually end up on APCUG's website. In the meantime, if you would like a PDF version of it, you can get it from my website at aztcs.org. Click on Meeting Notes. Summary. If your computer will not boot, here are some logical steps for you to follow, from the simple and obvious to more complex procedures. Topics. We will start off with basic common sense troubleshooting for any computer that you might have a problem with. Then we will go on to specifics for troubleshooting Windows desktops. Then we will go on to specifics for troubleshooting Windows laptops. Next, I will go into basic troubleshooting for a Mac OS X computer. Last but not least, I will give you a warning about using msconfig for making permanent changes in Windows. It causes lots of problems in the registry of Windows, so you should use other means to make changes to the startup programs that start up when Windows starts. Basic troubleshooting. This is the obvious for many of you. I am going to go through this very fast. If you are real new to computers, this could be a goldmine of information. If you have been using a computer for at least a few months, this is old stuff, and you are probably fast asleep by now. If your computer has a power adapter, like most laptops have, check to see if the indicator LED on it is lit up. A lot of newer laptops do not have an indicator LED on their power adapters. A lot of the older ones do. Next, push in all connectors, and especially power cables and USB cables have connectors at the end that go into your computer. Push them all the way in. If you're not pushed all the way in, it will cause problems for your computer. For example, if a USB 3 connector is halfway out of its USB port, it will become USB 2 or intermittent and cause you problems. Check for power at the electrical outlet by plugging in a lamp or other electrical device. Okay, I don't recommend plugging in a steam iron. Or anything that generates a lot of heat. But if you check with a low wattage lamp, or if you have an electrical tester, or even a surge strip with a little on lamp, that you can tell whether or not there's power coming out of the electrical outlet, and that's important for the longevity of any computer. What else can I tell you about? Okay, now. These are common sense things that are all over the internet, so I didn't really invent this stuff. Unplug the power cord or the power adapter and examine it for any breaks or damage. If you see any problems, try replacing the power cord or power adapter. If you do not see any problems, reattach the power cord or power adapter. Okay? If the computer makes some rhythmic beeps while you first turn it on, you can decipher their meaning by going to this website, or you can go to the user's manual of your computer, or the owner's manual of the motherboard of your computer. So the beeps mean a lot. And the beeps in a PC, Windows PC, do not mean the same thing as the beeps that come from a Mac when you first boot up and there's a problem. The Mac people have their own set of rhythmic beeps to tell you about different problems inside their computers. Finally, touch a cold water pipe ground or other electrical ground, disconnect all external USB or devices, all that you can, and disconnect, and then see if the computer will start up. Okay? If that's true, then reconnect the devices one at a time to try to isolate the troublemaker. If you're, I think that's repetitive. All right. Now, more into the guts of what can go wrong. If a RAM module starts getting unseated and starts working its way loose, it can cause the computer to fail to boot. If one that is not all the way seated into its socket is very bad news. So disconnect the power cord of your computer or your power adapter, wait 5 minutes, touch an electrical pipe ground, and if you suspect the RAM modules at all, especially on the cheaper motherboards on low-end computers, which don't have very good RAM sockets, pull each one out and reseat it. That often helps on the cheaper computers. And a poorly seated graphics adapter can cause also the initial power on self-test to terminate and the computer not to boot up. So you might want to blow away the dust that's undoubtedly gathered around it and look for it. There's various kinds, PCI, PCIe, and AGP, and then pull it out and reinsert it. What did I tell you about? Okay, you can finally, if nothing else works, you're free to locate the CMOS battery and yank it out, wait 5 minutes, and then reinsert it. Now, you cannot have anything powered up when you remove the CMOS battery, because it'll cause problems and may even blow your motherboard. And you can't have any kind of a powered up USB device, such as an active USB cable or a hub powered up attached to your computer. Any kind of DC power going into your motherboard will cause massive problems when you pull out the CMOS battery. Okay, and the CMOS battery looks like this. Hope you can see it. I've made it as big as I could possibly make it, and that's a photo I took. If the computer still won't start up after you replace the battery, let's see. What else are they saying? Oh no, that's another step. To replace the battery, it looks like the current ones look like this. This is not in 99% of the computers now. It's a CR2032. And if you push on this little tab that holds it in, it's a little keeper, push it away from the center of the battery will pop out. Don't push too hard, like I did once. And once it's out, wait 5 minutes and push it back in. If you have a real old computer, here are some other kinds of batteries that you might find in the computer. And if you have a real old computer, like in the 15, 20 to 25 year range, and you see this is the sign of a dead battery. It's leaked all kinds of fluids, which then dried and crystallized on the ends. This battery used to be in 90% of the computers in the country, made by a little company called Varda. Let's see. And then if you have a real old computer, about anything more than 20 years old, you'll see these strange looking batteries inside. That holder you see on the right that shows 3 1.5 volt AA cells was very popular amongst computer builders back 20 years ago. Nobody really wanted to use proprietary batteries, and everybody has AA cells. Okay? Now, what else did I tell you about? Okay, now, if your computer does start up but doesn't finish the boot, and you're not running Windows 8, 8.1, or 10, and you're running Windows 7, press either F8 or Shift F8. It depends, slightly different depending on which motherboard, and you'll get into one of the safe modes. And the safe modes let you start up the computer with a lot of drivers and other things turned off. And if it works well in safe mode, then you have to start turning off drivers and programs one at a time or of various groups at a time to isolate whatever's causing your computer not to boot. Okay. Most computers, let's move on to desktop computers. Most desktop computers, 99% of them have ATX version 1 or ATX version 2 form factor. I missed the quotation mark. Motherboards. Okay, that's the most popular form factor there is. And these motherboards are a little bit of a challenge to troubleshoot because they have an interconnection with the power supply, and the power supply is always feeding DC power into the motherboards, even when the computer is off from your perspective. Okay, it's an interconnection. It's very complicated. When you press the power button, on the left you have the power supply, on the right you have the motherboard, on the bottom you have the power switch that you press. When you press the power switch, you're actually grounding something inside the motherboard that detects that you've pressed the power button. It's a line that doesn't show up inside the power supply. So testing these power supplies is a bit of a challenge. So I'll show you a trick that I use for testing them. There's actually 2 ways to test them. Let me show you. One way is just swap out the power supply with another one, right? And if it works, your computer starts working, then you have a bad power supply. The other way is, I'm going to jump through this fast because I think that it's a little redundant. You can't test these power supplies without, most 90% of power supplies, without putting a load on them. But adding 2 spare hard drives on them is considered a good load. I don't know why they want 2, but that's what all the techs do. However, here is an inexpensive power supply tester and load device that I bought that works wonderfully. I bought a few other ones I had to return to Amazon. This is the only one that was a keeper. And it looks like this. It costs $8, $8.40. And you attach your power supply to that connector at the bottom, and you fire it up, and it tells you whether or not it's working. And it gives you an idea which voltages are working, and if any voltage is too high or too low. So keep that in mind. That's a heck of a good deal, unless you have a spare power supply you like to keep swapping for testing purposes. That's your other alternative. If the push button power switch of your desktop computer fails, you can replace it for about $2. However, a lot of people tell me they can't afford that, and I don't blame them. This is a strange economy. A lot of people are out of work. You can repurpose the reset switch, which is normally next to your power switch, to become the power switch. Okay, then you're good for another year or 2 before it breaks. What you'll find in most computers is a connector like this. They don't all look like that. And in this case, the power switch shorts momentarily when you press the button. The line that I'm showing you. So if you yank that line out, and underneath it is another line, which is blue and white and blue. Just the top one is white and orange, a little overexposed photo. And you move the bottom line up to the top line, your reset switch becomes your power switch, and you're good to go for another year or 2 before you break that power switch. And then if you really have to, you can buy them for about anywhere from $2 to $10, depending on the quality you want, from Amazon. Okay, so this is just my quick diagram of a computer I fixed for somebody. I decided I needed at least some explanation of how it looks. So I took this photo up here, and I drew what each one of these connectors do. Orange, white goes to the power button. On the lower side, the blue and white goes to the reset. So what I did for him was yank out the orange white and insert the blue white where the orange white used to go. And that got him up and running again. And he thought I was a real genius. And then electrolytic capacitors go out. And if you see white goo on the motherboard coming out, you can either replace the motherboard or you can resolder in new capacitors. So if you resolder in new capacitors, get the high quality ones that don't leak. I understand that there's two levels of capacitors these days that they sell. One's the version that leaks in about 2 or 3 years, and one's the version that leaks in 10 years. So it's up to you how much you want to spend and how much headaches you want. Okay, now troubleshooting a Windows laptop. This session I'm real proud of because it can save you a ton of money. Let me show you what I'm trying to tell you. Start off with the basic procedure I showed you at the beginning of this presentation. Okay, now try running the laptop with just the power adapter with the battery removed. Let me explain why. Batteries these days on most computers have firmware inside them. They speak to and communicate with the system board inside the laptop. Sometimes that firmware can cause the laptop not to boot up. And sometimes the battery is drawing so much current that it's lowered the voltage and amount of current going into the laptop to the point where the laptop won't start. So, and when that happens, you'll have these situations of, in some cases, of exploding batteries. So that's another thing you should check is yank out the battery and see if it runs without the when it's out. Okay. If the battery is still removed and you attach the power adapter, try wiggling the power plug where it's plugged into the power jack of the laptop. Some of those plugs, especially on the lower end laptops, go out. And when you wiggle it, you can get them working. So my quick fix is to put a piece of tape there and push it against one side or the other, and the guy has a working laptop for another year or two. Now, if I was really going to fix it for him, I'd try to replace the jack, but that's beside the point, right? These are quick fixes to get you up and running that don't cost anything. Some laptops have a reset pinhole in the bottom that you can jam a paper clip in to reset the system board. You don't have a motherboard in a laptop. It's about the size of your hand, and it's called a system board. Okay, now resetting the system board of a laptop. This is the most commonly performed procedure. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to perform. There's nothing you have to do other than a way of opening up the laptop. And once a tech does this for you, he's allowed to charge you for an hour worth of labor. So that makes him a lot of money. Just makes me a lot of money. Okay, let me go over the procedure real quick, and you can read more about it in some of the websites that I will then refer to. Disconnect the power adapter from the laptop and from the power outlet of your on the wall. Disconnect all USB and express card devices. You don't want anything attached to a laptop that might possibly feed even some residual voltage or current into it. Remove the battery of the laptop. Hold down the power button. That's that push button that you normally just push down for a second for 5 minutes. This procedure has been built into every laptop ever manufactured, including most of the Macs. And if you do it, what you're doing is you're bleeding off residual voltage in some of the chips and some of the capacitors inside the system board of the laptop. And oftentimes that fixes whatever problem you had with it. Now, with desktops, you don't have to hold down the button. You just disconnect everything and wait 5 minutes. I just had to do that with a computer of mine yesterday. So let me think. So if you then reconnect the power adapter, but not the battery. We don't trust the batteries. They have firmware in them that can keep your laptop from booting up. Press the power button for about 2 seconds and see the laptop will now boot up. If it will now boot up, then reconnect the battery and see if it will also boot up. So you're basically trying to isolate the troublemaker, right? What else can I tell you about? Okay, now, I just to show you how universal and to give you some confidence in this apparently nutty sounding procedure, I've gone and located people that have talked about it in various discussion groups and help sites And for Acer laptops, if you click on this link, the gentleman there will tell you how he fixed this laptop by pressing the power button. And the same for Asus laptops. Somebody was successfully fixed his laptop there, and he was bragging about it on this forum. And on Dell laptops, somebody at the community.dell.com was real happy that he fixed their laptop, and he wanted to tell everybody there about it. Finally, for HP laptops, you can go to these two websites. HP laptops are very prevalent out in the real world. So there's at least, I found 2 people talking about resetting it by holding down the power button after removing the power supply and the battery and everything else. Okay, and what else can I tell you about? Okay, IBM and Lenovo have a special, strange procedure for resetting a laptop. Don't ask me why they designed it that way. You've got to press a button for 2 seconds, and then wait 3 seconds, press another button for 4 seconds. It's some strange procedure they dreamed up when they went over the engineers in China to make life difficult for technicians. So you got to follow their procedure to reset the IBM and Lenovo ThinkPads. Okay. Microsoft also has a strange procedure for resetting their Surface tablet. So if you have one of those and it goes a little flaky on you, follow this lovemysurface.net tip. And finally, Toshiba also has some strange procedure that's a little non-standard. All of these procedures involve holding down the power button, but there are other things you have to do. So listen to that. Now, why did I tell you at the beginning you got to hold down the push button, the power button, for 5 minutes? Because as a tech, I'm too lazy to look up the correct amount of time you're supposed to press for each model of computer. I just hold it down, start drinking my coffee, and 5 minutes later I'm done. And I can, if I fix the computer, I can charge the guy for an hour of my labor. Okay. Now, troubleshooting a Mac OS X computer. Okay, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that for one reason. There's extremely good documentation about how to fix a Mac computer that won't boot up at the Apple website. It's in plain English, unlike the stuff in the Windows website. So first of all, start off by removing all the dust you can from any fan or vent in the Mac. Macs detect a fan that doesn't spin fast enough, and they won't boot. Been there, done that dozens of times. For the meaning of various beeps coming from your Mac, if it's complaining at you when you first start it up, look at this website. Follow the Apple company's detailed advice at here as the first step in troubleshooting a Mac that will not boot up. Then reset the SMC, System Management Controller. Instead of having a BIOS, a Mac has a bunch of weird stuff in it. It's a system management controller and some kind of a PRAM or something. I'll show you. They've got these funny names for what is their proprietary BIOS, which is now equivalent to an EFI, which someday will be a UEFI, but that's beside the point, okay? That's only for us techs. Reset the system management controller by following these instructions. And it involves holding down a key, obviously, and starting up the computer, right? And then this NVRAM stuff fails a lot in the Mac, once in a while maybe. I've only had it happen once in 3 years. And you can follow the instructions for resetting it by holding down a set of keys and while starting it up. And follow the instructions are here. Okay, finally, Windows has a utility called msconfig, also called system configuration. It looks like this. And for some reason in Windows 10 it always defaults to selective startup. I don't know why, but enough for me to ask. All I want to tell you is in there is a startup tab, and as you can see here, I have most of my stuff turned off. I have this VMware Tools module that starts up, so I can run virtual machines, and I need to have it on. And you notice that I've managed to delete everything else already. But a lot of you will find a pile of stuff in there. That's just an indicator of how to remove temporarily something to see if it's causing trouble. Okay. In order to, you don't want to use the system configuration, or MS-config, for turning off either startup items or services for a whole pile of reasons. And here's an example of a computer someone loaned me. It has a ton of stuff running into it, and I turned it all off on it. And in this version, this is Windows 7, you can't turn it off directly. So I went into the registry and I put in the word rem in front of things that I don't want to run. Because if you turn it off by unchecking it, you'll cause problems with your computer. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I won't go into it in too much detail. If you want to read why, these two sites quote why Microsoft's explanation, which is here. They want you not to use it because it causes problems and actually weakens your computer, makes it easier for malware to enter and edit and modify your registry, and it puts your computer into some strange modes during boot up. So you don't want to deal with it. In the case of Windows 10, 8.1 and 10, it's very easy to turn off things that you don't want to start. Okay? It's a little harder in 7, that's all. You have to edit the registry most of the time. And I have instructions for doing that on my website. So you can, it's safer for you to read my instructions and look at the screenshots before doing it yourself through trial and error. I've done the trial and error for you. In Windows 8, 8.1, and 10, instead of you using MS-config, there's a menu you can get to now. Press Control-Shift-Escape, click on More Details, click on the Startup tab, and right-click on anything you want to disable. And I'll show you some screenshots on that in a minute if I have any. In Windows 7, yeah, you can follow my instructions at this website for editing the registry to turn off startup stuff and not cause problems using MS-config. Okay? Now this, I guess I don't have this. I guess it's in the other one. Anyhow, we're kind of at the halfway point. So if you have any questions, fire them off by chat. If not, I think I'll jump into the second half of my presentation. Okay. Now, let's see if I can figure that out. Let's go here. I'm going to minimize that. I'll start up a second PowerPoint. I'm going to make it big. This is the second part of my presentation. Now, when your computer will not boot, what does a technician want to do for you? They want to try booting it up with various bootable devices to see if the problem can be isolated to something on the hard drive. Okay? You always want to isolate the problem instead of running around in circles like a chicken with your head cut off. And again, this presentation is at my website. These are more advanced troubleshooting techniques in which you would use a bootable CD, DVD, USB flash drives, or external USB hard drives to boot up your computer to try to repair or at least isolate the problem. Okay? And okay, and in this section, I talk about first booting up with these different devices, how you can make one of these devices by burning a DVD or CD disk, and how you can plan ahead by making a backup of your computer's hard drive and then use it later when your computer's hard drive has problems. So it involves a lot of planning ahead of time. There are two great advantages from booting up with a bootable device. Advantage number one, you can use a Linux-based bootable CD, DVD, or USB thumb drive to remove malware. When you're running Linux, malware can't run, and Linux can beat up on malware. Malware only is designed to run 99.999% of it in a Windows, and about 1% of them run in a Mac environment. So when you boot it with Linux, all of a sudden you're Lord and Master over the computer again, even if malware is lurking in your computer. And a lot of antivirus vendors have created free CDs and DVDs you can create to use their software to fix a computer. And I'll tell you about that in a second, more about that at least. And then the second thing is, Microsoft has provided a ton of utilities. If you boot up with some other device, a CD, a DVD, or USB thumb drive, or a USB hard drive other than the drive that's already inside your computer. So you can, it's the way technicians fix computers. So you can do some of the same yourself. Now, this is a lot of detail, okay? I'm going to jump over some of this. I'm going to run out of time if I go through all this. During the summer of 2012, between August and October, Windows 8 became released to manufacturer, which means people are starting to make Windows 8 computers. And Microsoft required that they all start converting and selling as, instead of having a BIOS, that they now should have a unified extensible firmware interface with secure boot enabled. That is a mouthful. Okay, so I need to take a deep breath after I say it. The legacy BIOS was invented by Gary Kildall, who invented one of the original DOS around the mid-1970s. And the Apple company never had anything to do with them. And they started using this more modern stuff called an EFI, but then Intel and their partners created a UEFI, okay? And that's what you'll get if you buy a computer now, a UEFI. And it's a long story, but since October 2026, Microsoft has forbidden its partners to sell a computer and put the Windows logo on it or in their advertising unless they have a UEFI. And they have to have a UEFI with secure boot enabled, okay? These are just requirements. And then when you have a UEFI with secure boot enabled, that makes it real hard for malware, viruses, and most distributions of Linux to run in your computer, okay? So the Linux build up is screaming blood and murder. And there are two versions of Linux, I'm not going to go into it for very long, that I love. One's called Ubuntu and one's called Fedora, that run very nicely and can get along with all this extra security that is now inside Microsoft Windows computers. So that's the only two companies that seem to have mastered dealing with the Microsoft Dragon for security. See what else can I tell you about? Okay, if you use a Microsoft provided installation media, or a DVD, or a system repair disk that you make from inside your own copy of Windows, or a hard drive that's made into a recovery drive that you can make inside your copy of Windows inside the control panel, it can boot and get past all the security, because Microsoft makes sure that its stuff can pass all these security certificates and things. What else can I tell you about? Okay, anytime you create installation media, like an installation disk for Windows 7, for Windows Vista, and the free ones they now let you make for Windows 8, 8.1, and 10, in there is a ton of tools for repairing your computer. So don't assume that just because you inserted an installation media disk that you'll get a complete new install of Windows and overwrite what's in your computer. There's a zillion tools now inside for fixing computers. So it's kind of in addition to reloading an entire copy of Windows. Okay, system repair disk, something you can make from inside Windows 8 or 10, inside the control panel. You have to give up an external DVD drive in order to make this happen. And then you have to put it aside. A lot of people aren't willing to spend that kind of money. But most people are willing to make and download a 40-cent DVD. So that is a simpler way to fix things and not quite as effective as this system repair disk. But Microsoft is giving you options. You want to spend a little more money for a better tool, you make one of these. Okay? And you click on, if you go into Control Panel, you click on Recovery. You can click on, I think this is a Windows 7 shot. I'm assuming about more people are still running Windows 7 than 10, and 8. So I base a lot of my presentations on Windows 7. And you have similar tools inside Windows 8 and 10. You click on Create a Recovery Drive. It makes a drive that's real smart on helping you restore your computer. It isn't quite an entire, it doesn't make an entire image of your computer, but it records a lot of the things in your computer to help you. So what else can we talk about? Okay, now we're not going to get too much into this. I've got to run out of time. If instead of a BIOS, you now have a UEFI, and the UEFI, from the practical standpoint, is a fancy BIOS with a mouse running or cursor running inside it. Back in 1975, they didn't dream of ever having enough processing power to let you run your mouse inside a BIOS. So all those screens for our BIOS computers are text-based, and all the menus are text-based. Well, now with the UEFI, you get pictures, you get all kinds of nice things, and you get a mouse, which works just fine. Okay. Now, if you set, and not all computers let you do this, if you set the compatibility support module, that's another thing that they have inside all the UEFIs, to auto, then your computer acts like both the older computer and the newer computer during the boot up. Okay, it acts like a BIOS computer, and if that doesn't work, you'll go into a UEFI mode. So let me just show you what I'm trying to tell you about. If you turn off the secure boot module, and you activate the compatibility support module, there's two things that can happen to your computer depending on how your computer is designed. One is it can do both when it boots up. Second thing is it can act like a BIOS computer, like the old-fashioned computer, when it starts up. So you don't know what it is until you read the literature. What else can I tell you about? All right. Okay, secure boot, you can turn it off. Microsoft decided to let people turn it off. You can turn off the secure boot module, and that doesn't necessarily turn on the compatibility support module. And if you turn off secure boot, during the boot up, you're still booting up as a UEFI, except that it doesn't ask for the security certificate, and you're a little less secure. So it's easier for malware and hackers to get into your computer. Okay, so it's up to you. Turning off the secure boot module isn't generally recommended because every little bit of security helps in this crazy world of ours. So most people turn it back on after they turn it off for testing and whatnot. What else can I tell you about? Okay, if you boot, supposing you have a copy of Windows 8.1 inside your computer, it won't boot. What would you do? Well, one very smart thing to do is, if it seems like it's powering up and the hard drive just doesn't seem like it's doing anything, maybe it's even on, but you don't hear the normal sounds and all that, go to another computer and download Windows 8 and burn it to a DVD and use it to boot up your computer. Then you can at least try to isolate the problem to the hard drive, right? And you do the same thing with Windows 10. In the Windows 10, it's called the Media Creation Tool. And in there, there's a Download Now Tool Now button that makes this Media Creation Tool. It's a temporary applet that runs in any computer, Windows 7 and higher. And it lets you download an ISO file that you can then burn to a DVD. Okay? And I have in here, just in case any of you need it, information about burning DVDs. And it depends on your computer. It depends on what version of operating system you have. If you, what can I tell you about? Okay, if you use Windows installation media to fix a computer, it isn't capable of cleaning your computer of viruses and malware. It just knows how to fix Windows. Microsoft tries to stick to the operating system. Malware is, as far as they're concerned, making someone else's headache. So you can go to various websites, and I talk about them here, and you can download from the Bitdefender company or the Norman company. You probably never heard of them. I think they're in France. An ISO file to burn to a CD or DVD, and you can use them to boot up either the newer model UEFI or the older model BIOS Windows computers. Okay, you can't do anything with Macs with these disks. If you burn it, and you could download this Bitdefender Rescue CD. It's the best one out there. I use it all the time. And then when you boot up your Windows computer, you get this crazy Linux screen. If it boots up with this crazy Linux screen, that tells you most of the motherboard is running, right? And so then you're starting to suspect the hard drive. Then if you pick your language, it lets you pick about 7 different languages, including whatever Baslang is, and then you hit the enter key. You can then scan your computer for viruses and malware, something that the Windows equipment can't do. And if nothing else, it will tell you that the problem is probably isolated to the hard drive because everything else is working. So what else can I tell you about? All right, so you go down here and you go down here. The Norman Rescue Disk works almost as well as the Bitdefender one. Okay, and it's both of these sometimes fail when secure boot is enabled. So sometimes you may have to disable secure boot before either one of these will work. Then I don't have any screenshots of running that one, but that one is also helpful. And like you all probably know, different antiviruses can beat up on different problems. No two are alike, and each one can only do about between 90 and 98% of the viruses and malware out there. There's that 2 or 3% that it can't touch of bad stuff. Okay, burning as DVD or CD in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10, you would right-click on the ISO file from wherever you found it, and then you would click on Burn Disk Image, right? That's how you do it. In Windows, and then you would go Burn Disk Image, select the DVD if you have more than one drive, click on Burn, and pretty soon you have a bootable device for booting up any Windows computer, right? That meets the hardware requirements for that particular operating system. So that's that. What else can I tell you about? Okay, close when you're done. If you want to burn a DVD or CD in Windows 7 Vista, XP, or Windows 2000, I'm probably the only person left in the world that's still running Windows 2000. You can get this free piece of software from cdburnerxp.se. SE is somewhere in Europe, I believe, and you can, then help you get this software, and then they'll help you burn DVDs and CDs that you download from other companies. Okay.
Okay, Francis, this is David. We got about another 3 minutes.
All right. In that case, I'll just entertain questions, and you're welcome to invite me to talk to any of your group. You're welcome to read the rest of this on your own and learn more about booting up with an external device. That is the way us techs try to isolate the problem before we get our hands dirty and open up someone's computer. And the general rule in the world of technical repairs is once you open up the computer, you charge them double. So it's just kind of a rule of thumb. So here's my information again. I don't have my website up and running on listed on here. I should probably have added it in. Send me an email if you want to know any more about any of this stuff, and try resetting your next laptop that fails, your next computer desktop that fails. Try disconnecting everything and letting it sit for 10 minutes, and you'll find that often fixes a lot of things.